Well, guys, we've talked about this for a long time, but it turns out this is the year when Santa Claus is not bringing the reindeer. He's not flying through the air. He's not going down chimneys. He's not eating the cookies. He's not drinking the milk. He's not doing any of the normal things. Instead, this year, Santa Claus is ushering in the season where we put every single goddamn asset on the blockchain. If you feel like you've already had your fill of on-chaining of assets and you just want to see your assets coming off-chain and turning into moon Lambos, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let's see who we've got around here today. Pucky Hawk is here. He says, "Well, this is up early, or I just noticed early. Same time as always. But I post the the X posting about it whenever sort of the prep work is done. So that can be variable, but it actually goes up. It should go up at around the same time. Okay, exactly the same time every single night. Sort of Sunday through Thursday night." Western time. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to describe this sort of Western Hemisphere time. Later if you're in the Eastern Hemisphere. Puckyok says, "Well, this is up earlier. I just noticed early. I am doing my best to duplicate Popeye's fried chicken and think I nailed it. The secret is to use an iron pan, lard, and plenty of cayenne pepper." I can definitely believe the part about the lard and the cayenne pepper. That sounds good. I'm definitely, as a carnivore, as a long-term carnivore, I'm definitely in favor of the eating of the animals in many different forms. So I'm with you on all that. It eclipses. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Donkey Net is here. The AOS crew. Adam Olson says Anthony Joshua within 2 rounds. Otherwise, it's a work. I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting fight to see. I'm not as opinionated in boxing matches as I am in other combat sports, but so I have no idea on boxing. Santa looks swole. Yes, J. Marie is right. This is the swole Santa. No more of that out of shape Santa. This is the swole Santa. In fact, I think Santa looks like he's taken a little bit too much of the old HGH there. Obviously, high doses of some kind of synthetic testosterone, but probably way too much HGH. He's not as lean a Santa as I would call a fit Santa. He's a little more on the super augmented steroidal side, but definitely too much of the HGH. We can't see his forehead, so we can't see. No gynecomastia, though. No gynecomastia. So he did that part right. Crazy Speed Freak. Let's go. Let's go. James Syracuse. What's up? What's up? Tokenized fried chicken will be interesting. We're going to talk about tokenization for sure. Binducam is here. Rulo, hola. Thank you for joining. Brown Bearded Hermit is here. Evening. Marco is here. Marco Cardano. Hello. Thank you for joining. Let's go. Blue Mammal is here. What's up, Blue Mammal? And Mission Zambia is here. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining from Zambia. So there's something in the air. This happens every year around the holidays. What happens, I think, in a lot of the industrialized world is all of the companies, they're kind of, everybody knows that at least, a lot of the companies in sort of Europe and, most of the Western Hemisphere, everybody knows they're all going to kind of go to sleep toward the end of December for the holiday, the Western holiday season. They're all going to kind of go to sleep at the end of December. So there's always it's sort of like everybody's plotting. Everybody's kind of plotting what they're going to be doing, come January next year. We go through the whole, New Year's resolution thing. And, for on an individual retail person level, like all of us, that, often involves things like fitness. But for companies, it's like, okay, what are we going to do next year? Let's start plotting that. They're just like plotting, but everybody knows they can't really launch anything. You can't really launch it in December because everybody's going to go to sleep for like the second half of December and nothing happens until after New Year's. And there's this kind of like hangover period after New Year's. And then, sometime in January, sometimes January, everybody sort of wakes back up and they start launching stuff. So what we're seeing right now are sort of the hints. Like every year, we're sort of seeing the hints of what's going to be happening in the commercial world, after the holiday season. So right now, what we're sort of seeing is a lot of chatter about a couple of different things. There's a couple of really big themes going on. One of them I'm calling the great on-chaining. On-chaining is something we've talked about in crypto for a long, long time. We've been talking about things coming on-chain, and certainly the swole, steroidal, HGH abusing Santa, he is dragging his own sled by a chain. He's on-chaining. He's bringing everything via chain. No reindeer, no flying, no chimneys, no coming down the chimney, no eating the cookies. He's just pure steroids and pulling the sled around with his own chain because he's on-chaining everything. We're going to talk about that. But first, we need to talk about a little bit of what's going on in the aftermath of the Federal Reserve FOMC meeting the other day. So already, you remember the big news, of course, was the $40 billion per month in liquidity. But you notice just today, and you remember last week, along with the $40 billion in not QE, they don't want us to call it QE, they want us to call it reserve management, in their reserve management purchases of, currently short-term securities. There's the 40 billion, but they also announced they were taking away the limitations on aggregate overnight repo. So they can do as much as they want in the overnight repo department. And here we already see they did 5.2 billion just today. So remember, the 40 billion per month in balance sheet expansion was a really big deal. Everybody went crazy about that. But just today in the overnight repo market, they did 5 billion, totally outside of that 40 billion. There's no limitation on this. They can do as much as they want. And remember, in a single, sort of fell swoop, they did 29 billion on October 31st. This is the most they've done in a long time. This is a 5-year chart. But even if we move the chart out to max, let's see if the Federal Reserve website will be responsive for us here. Here we go. If we move it out to max, we see what happened in COVID. But other than COVID, they don't do this much, right? Even during the in the aftermath of the .com crash, which I lived through, you see they had, one period where they did 11.5. Just in Q4, we had one event where we did 29 billion. They didn't do anything like this in the aftermath of the .com crash. They didn't do anything like this in the lead up to the GFC. They went crazy during COVID. We know that. But this recent stuff, this Q4 stuff they've been doing is wild. And they just took the guardrails off that. They were like, okay, we know everybody's going to pay attention to the 40 billion per month. That's going to be the big headline news. But also, let's take the guardrails off this. And then we'll just do this whenever we want. And the only people who will notice are the people who are really looking. So today they did 5 billion, totally separate from that 40 billion they were talking about. So this is just the beginning. I keep saying that what we saw, that grimacing face we saw of Jerome Powell, where he was, doing the thing that was like a frown, but like 6 inches long. He can do that with his face. That was the thing. When he made that expression, I knew that was the sort of tell. That was the tell. He'd be a very bad poker player if that's the way he acts at the poker table. But that was the tell. Like, I'm telling you about the bad thing right now, taking the guardrails off. And the other bad thing was probably the 40 billion is just what they're saying right now. But it all sort of fits this general model that when things are going to get crazy because they have to roll over the debt, the Federal Reserve will do everything it needs to create all the liquidity. They're going to play their role in this little sock puppet theater we do in terms of global finance. They're going to play their role where they flood the markets with liquidity. And sure enough, we already know it's 40 billion a month. And just today, totally outside that in the repo markets, they did 5 billion, and there's no guardrails on that whatsoever. So since that announcement last week, we've seen a lot of people talking about this, even our friend Warren Buffett, who famously hates crypto. He hates crypto, but he's been around TradFi for a long time. I think it's safe to say he has his finger on the pulse of TradFi over the course of his entire career in a way that not many other people can claim. He definitely seems to know what he's doing in the TradFi markets. And he's saying, if you watch this clip here, he says basically, hey, we don't want to be in an asset that's a currency that's going to go to hell. He literally used the word hell. They don't want to be in an asset, a currency that's going to go to hell. And then he starts talking about the US dollar. This is pretty bad. This is pretty bad. So he talks about debasement, and then he says they don't want to be in an asset that's going to go to hell. So a lot of people are starting to talk about the same narrative that maybe next year is going to have to be the big liquidity year, And we know that's because Scott Bessent has to roll over all that debt. So you can hear it from Warren Buffett's own mouth. He's afraid of the amount of debasement that may, in his view, obviously is about to take place. So how much debt are we talking about? So a lot of people, so this is just a representation. I'm not trying to direct people to this particular person, but this is just the first example of this trend I ran into. You're going to see a lot of people, a lot of commentators, a lot of macro commentators right now online. They're all talking about this same thing. This video he did, here's the gist of it, is summed up in his little blurb here. The Fed just admitted markets won't buy $9 trillion of federal debt that's coming due. So there's this wall of debt. You'll see other people making videos this week and probably for some time about this wall of debt that's coming due. He says the Fed just admitted the markets won't buy this wall of debt that's coming to due. So the Fed will. Last time the Fed did this in the 1940s, it led to 20% inflation. When Germany did it in I believe somebody down below pointed out it was actually the 1920s, and I think he got it right in the video, but there was a typo. He said 1930s here. When Germany did it in the 1920s, it led to hyperinflation. So this is the same as always. This is the Austrian economics nightmare of hyper manipulation of the currency, hyper debasement. This is the reason crypto exists. This is the reason Bitcoin exists. This debasement of the currency and what it does to, individuals like us in the economy. But once again, it seems like the cycle doesn't really end. There is no end to the cycle because the debt is unserviceable without flooding the markets with liquidity, without printing money, and that is debasement of the currency. That's what you're going to see a lot of people pointing out after last week's meeting. The big news in last week's meeting, the big headline news was the rates got cut just like we expected, but then there's also this 40 billion, and also they can pump money into the system via the repo market whenever they want to with no aggregate limits. So everything is primed. Everything is primed for more liquidity coming into the market. All signs are pointing in that direction for 2026. Again, anything can happen. There's a lot of possible black swans that change things one way or another. But right now, all signs are that, man, a lot of liquidity is going to have to come into the market. There's going to have to be a lot of debasement of the dollar. But that's not what the thumbnail's about. The thumbnail is about something else. So just this week, we're seeing a lot of interviews with people like the new SEC chair, Atkins. So Paul Atkins, he gave this interview on Mornings with Maria, where you've seen her interview Charles many times. He gave this interview where he was saying things like this. In the last few years, only communist China and the US through the SEC were trying to make crypto illegal. We kind of know that in crypto. He's preaching to the choir. We're well aware of Operation Choke Point 2.0. But he says that's changed. It's a brand new day. That we also know. That's why crypto did not embrace the last administration like it embraced this change. But here's where it starts to get interesting. So she says, hey, she basically says, and I'm just going to paraphrase here. She basically says, hey, is everything just going to go on chain? are all of financial services going to go on chain? And Paul Atkins comes back. He responds that basically crypto is the way the financial services world will work in maybe not even 10 years, maybe only a couple of years. He's basically saying everything in the financial services world, and he's the head of the SEC. So he's really saying everything in the securities world is going to come on chain. He's not saying, you know, TradFi is going to accept crypto as part of the TradFi universe. He's saying all of the TradFi universe is going to come on chain, and might not be 10 years. It might just be a couple of years when everything's on chain. He even talks about instead of settlement sort of being T+1, he talks about the T0 concept we've had in crypto for a long time, that if only securities settlement happened on chain, instead of settlement happening in like a day, it could be instantaneous. This is a big innovation for those TradFi rails. It's a big change from the TradFi rails when settlement in sort of both the securities world and the straight up banking world, non-securities related banking world, even just when we're talking about fiat deposits, settlement is a thing measured in days, whereas crypto can help all of the financial services world sort of leapfrog from T+1 plus whatever, depending on what you're doing, to T0, instantaneous settlement, which is a big change. I've talked many times on this channel about Caitlin Long's sort of note on this, that actually all of the banks, the way the whole banking system is set up, it's not really ready to handle instantaneous settlement, because that sort of T plus, a day or two gives the banking system this buffer where it can sort of, absorb mistakes and things like that. With T plus T0, it's like there is no buffer. So we'll see. I mean, I think this is gonna be a little bit of a rocky process, TradFi coming on chain, but certainly we're seeing a lot of people talking about this. Like, this is happening. It's no longer, it's a thing we used to talk about in crypto, and we were like, yeah, that could happen, in the next few decades. TradFi is seeing the benefits. They're on board, and they've got an SEC that's like, yeah, it's happening in the next couple of years. This is a huge change. What we're talking about is tokenization of everything. I mean, if the SEC is willing to let securities come on chain, that means anything can come on chain. If securities can come on chain, every asset can come on chain. And the world of financial services, where there's a better way to make money, they will show up. They will show up for that. So we also see that here, right? If you think it's just a Trump appointee who's on board for this, that's not the case. Here we have the head of DTCC. So if you don't know what DTCC is, here you go. The Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. And I know people complain anytime I'm on light mode. I'm with you. Thank you for reminding me. I will choose dark mode always. But the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation is an American financial market infrastructure company that provides clearing, settlement, and trade reporting services to financial market participants. It was established in 1999 as a holding company combining DTC and NSCC. So the important part you need to know here is in 2022, DTCC settled the vast majority of securities transactions in the United States. 2.5 quadrillion, not billion, not trillion, quadrillion. So this is how settlement happens. This is how securities transaction settlement happens, to the tune of 2.5 quadrillion. This guy is the head of DTCC. And in this video, he is as strongly in favor of what Paul Atkins was telling us in that last interview as Paul Atkins. He says the industry is going whole hog into tokenization. They're ready to go. There's no, hey, blockchains seem like a novel and interesting technology. Wouldn't it be a cool experiment if we tokenize stuff? No, they're already in. DTCC is in. They are super down. They are super down for the tokenization, and the SEC. You can see the subheadline here: DTCC receives no action letter from SEC over tokenization. It's the SEC is going to let them. TradFi is in. This post says DTCC is acting as a core facilitator, tokenizing real-world assets at the foundational level, then letting institutions deploy them across different blockchains. They're all in. They want to tokenize everything. Santa Claus is not coming with the reindeer this year. He's coming with the actual tokenization we've talked about for so long. So let's hit some comments here. Marco says, love Charles' video today about where the crypto market is, the retail left in 2021, 2022. Yep, it's been I like that Charles acknowledged in that video that 2025 was a wildly bad year, and it's just true. And part of it was the weirdness of institutions coming into Bitcoin. It changed things. It disrupted things for the rest of us. Good evening, at Cardano. Thank you for joining. So they are buying treasuries back. Isn't this the opposite of printing money? So there's the reverse repo market and there's the repo market, right? So so this is the repo market, not the reverse repo market. A repurchase agreement, you can see right here on the chart. If you go to Fred, you can always, they lay out the difference because they know everybody gets confused by this. A repurchase agreement is a transaction in which the New York Fed, under the authorization and direction of the FOMC, buys a security from an eligible counterparty under an agreement to resell that security in the future. So they're using dollars. Somebody in the system, in the market, has securities. They give that party dollars and they take in the security. So that's a way to push dollars into the market. Reverse repos are the opposite. So wanted to address that. Okay. Hilldog, thank you for being here. Twig, thank you for being here. I know. It's I always forget when I'm setting it up, I always forget. And then when I actually go to the page, I realize it's blindingly bright. Yep, I'm with you guys. I myself am a dark mode always guy. Yep, I'm with you. Frezek, thank you for joining. Yep, darkness. Okay, I'm glad you guys are all on board for dark mode. More on that later. More on that in some time. What about real-time blockchains exposing all the naked shorts and fraudulent shares in the system? So yeah, the naked shorting issue, this goes back a long ways. What's his name? The biggest, the most interesting sort of like part of the naked short drama was Patrick Byrne, the Overstock guy, famous later for his whole thing with the Russian spies and Hillary Clinton and all that craziness. But Patrick Byrne went on this huge thing about naked short sellers. It was really interesting. You know, like maybe, God, was this like almost 20 years ago now? He went on this huge thing about the naked short selling. And actually, some of the little things he put out on naked short selling were almost like investigative journalism. I mean, his own company Overstock was from his view suffering from naked short sellers. But it was really interesting during that time period when he was putting out all the information about naked short selling. And he was worried the naked short sellers were super powerful and that he'd be caught, they would like frame him and he'd be caught with narcotics in the trunk of his car or something. It was craziness. It was crazy. He's a wild boy also, like the guys in the current administration. But that was one of the most interesting times. And his solution to this, for a while, he supported a blockchain solution that was going to bring that the idea of it was to bring securities transactions settlement to T0. So it's really interesting all these years later to hear the SEC chair talking about the same concepts. Yeah, Charles keeps telling the truth, probably why he's maligned so frequently. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you fall outside of, it's sort of the concept of the Overton window for sure. But one time in this channel, I did this big Venn diagram of innovative ideas versus crowd-pleasing ideas versus ideas that are actually good ideas. And it's like the crowd-pleasing ideas, the vast majority of them aren't good ideas or innovative thinking. And the crowd will only accept a very small sliver of innovative, like accurate thinking, and an even smaller sliver of innovative thinking that's like actually a good idea. I shouldn't say accurate, but a good idea. And Charles, I think, comes with a lot of innovative thinking, and a lot of it is composed of very good ideas. And so if that Venn diagram I did on this channel is accurate, I think it is, that automatically means the vast majority of those ideas are going to be unpalatable to the crowd, because the crowd are sheep and they like already accepted ideas, and they engage in short-term thinking, right? They engage in short-term thinking. That's how the sheep are. They're not doing strategic long-term thinking. They're doing short-term thinking. And that means they pretty much only accept ideas that are already accepted. Okay, does anyone understand what Charles means when he mentions Night releasing in Japan? Can't Japan just buy on Kraken? What's that mean? I don't know anything about, I will admit, I don't know anything about Japanese regulation of crypto and how all that works. It would be nice if he would elucidate what's going on there a little bit, because I haven't heard anybody explain this. I'm sure anybody involved in crypto in Japan could easily explain this. I'm guessing this is a Japanese crypto regulation thing, or maybe it's just when Night is launching on a Japanese exchange. I don't know, but I would also like to know. Okay, Adam says, try now we can only use, and our only fuse becomes our fire. Okay. Try now we can only use, and our only fuse becomes our fire. Okay. Okay. As the QE begins, the timer begins on the prophesized final low. I hope so. I hope we're about done with these lows. This has been a rough year. I mean, it's almost like it wouldn't be satisfying to exit the year on an upswing. It's been such a horrible year. I almost want us to just exit the year, have the whole year just be horrible. Exit the year and just start fresh. We might as well shake out all we can this year and call it, just forget about this year and start 2026. Frosty Peas, thank you. Yes, this is a live one. Thank you for joining. Isn't that what happened with GameStop brought to the forefront about conglomerate short selling? Yeah, I mean the whole sort of GameStop movement, that whole movement, was all about sort of retail taking power back from the insiders. A lot of different things. Yeah, that was one of that was sort of one of the only times we've ever seen the sort of retail equities buyers do anything that sort of defied the insiders. Do you think the relentless a-holes in Charles' live stream are mostly bots? I would prefer it if they were mostly bots, but I think it's a lot of people. There are a lot of crazy people out there, and if you do anything noteworthy, they will hate you for it. Because the crazy people sitting in their dungeon master layers, not doing anything they're personally proud of in their own lives, they're going to hate anybody doing anything that they, wish they could do. It's basically like this horrible form of envy, I think. And it's like, no matter what you do, if you do anything valuable or noteworthy, there are going to be people in their dungeon layers hating on you. Oh, okay. Adam says, I was trying to say, try to let the night on fire. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Okay. The doors. Yeah. From the doors. Yeah. I like it, man. We need some fire. We need to light the crypto markets on fire. If Knight and Cardano can kick that off, that would be fantastic. I think it's like Charles said, it's folks that got burned on a trade expecting a 10x because they watched a BitBoy video on TikTok. Dolphy Wolf is here. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, no, I think this is true though. I think a lot of people, Streetwise is right. A lot of people, I mean, a lot of people jumped into crypto when we were, when Cardano was above $1 a year ago. And they were, I mean, they had a lot of people giving them Fibonaccios talking about how we were at $1 then and we were going to be at X number of dollars by the end of 2025. And then 2025 turned out to be the exact opposite of that. The Fibonaccios led everybody to believe we would go, we would like, if anything, we would go 4x up from $1. Instead, we went 4x down from $1.20, So, I mean, no surprise people are mad. 2025 was like probably one of the most disappointing years in the history of crypto. And we've had some bad years in crypto. I lived through almost all of the bad years in crypto, but 2025 was one of the very bad ones. So no surprise that there's some very angry, bitter people out there. I think we're all, some part of all of us must be a little bit unhappy for sure. I hope in 2026, my hardest decision I make is what color Lambo I want. God, if we could just, we need some good things to happen. I bought 9 on Sunday Swap successfully today. Good feeling. Okay, great. Fantastic. I don't want my crypto set on fire. Yeah, we do not want to burn up the crypto. We want the markets to ignite. We want the markets to ignite in a positive way, in an explosive upward direction. For sure. We don't want our crypto lighting on fire. So Paul Atkins has been busy. Has been busy. He's given a lot of speeches lately, and they're all very pro crypto. This one was kind of interesting. In this one, he talks about a lot of people are posting this one today. I think Daniil reposted this. That might have been the way that I originally saw this post. So thank you to Daniil for pointing this out. I think it might have been this one, but in this speech, people are focusing on him saying that blockchains are basically the world's most advanced financial system, and they have this like radical transparency that has all these benefits. But I almost think the most important part of this video is that he points out that blockchains can also become a panopticon. This is something that Charles has talked about a lot, and a lot of people in crypto talk about. So panopticon is this sort of hypothetical prison where there's like a guard shack in the middle of the prison. And from the guard shack, the prison cells are sort of built in like almost a Colosseum round shape around, like a circle around the guard shack. And from the guard shack, you can see into every single prison cell in the entire prison. That's what a panopticon is. And it's a good mental imagery to explain the horrors of blockchain technology sort of in the wrong hands, right? Applied in an evil, unnatural way. So we all know about this. This is what we're afraid of with a CBDC. We're afraid a CBDC could be created with a centralized, on a centralized blockchain. And then, a bunch of, a regulatory force at probably the Federal Reserve, would be, watching every single one of our transactions. You could argue today, certainly, law enforcement can get warrants and they can monitor transactions if they need to, but a CBDC would be all of that on steroids, right? All of that kind of financial monitoring on steroids. We definitely don't want that. It's refreshing to have an SEC chair who's aware of this. He's like, hey, blockchains are incredibly transparent. The radical transparency of blockchains has all these benefits, but at the same time, there's this danger. If you harness that in the wrong way, it becomes this financial panopticon. He doesn't even pronounce the word correctly in his video here, but at least he knows about this danger. He realizes we have to hit the sweet spot. If we do this wrong and we get a financial panopticon, it's this hellscape, right? That we don't want. And if we stifle crypto and blockchains, we don't get all the benefits of this radical transparency. And of course, we have Midnight, which is a dual shielded, unshielded blockchain. And so it might be the best combination of both worlds. You can have the privacy when you need it. You can be transparent when you don't need the privacy. So we already have some technologies to kind of hit this sweet spot, right? Obviously, there needs to be, we don't want the terrorists. We do not want the terrorists sending money back and forth using crypto. We're not trying to enable, their purchase of, weapons and all the things they want. But at the same time, we don't want the panopticon. So, there are times when we're going to want to be able to prove we're not terrorists or fentanyl traffickers. And there are going to be times when, the regulators don't need to know what you're buying on a Friday night at the grocery store or whatever, right? Okay, Streetwise says, yeah, a lot of us have been getting our faces ripped off like Nicolas Cage this year. If people don't know, there was a famous movie in the 90s called Face Off with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. That was a John Woo movie. If you're not aware of the John Woo action movies, he was like a Hong Kong action director. He made Hard Boiled, which was the movie, I believe, that made Chow Yun-fat famous. Very, very good movies. We've kind of lost. I wish we had that genre of action movie back. The action movies we get now are pretty weak sauce compared to the John Woo days. I wish John Woo would come back as a 25-year-old director and just be embraced by Hollywood, even though that could never happen these days, and just make, hard boil sequels every single year. Adam Olson says, honestly, if you had your thumbnail light on fire, that would be a panopticon. That's a lot of logs. Yep. That was the thumbnail from yesterday. That was the one from yesterday for sure. Yeah, if the it was kind of I sort of chose that knowing that people would be afraid once the flamethrower hit the logs would come tumbling down, to acknowledge that we've got wild boys in the administration in DC, and they're going to make some mistakes. You know what I mean? Mistakes have been made this year, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter who you support politically. Mistakes were made this year. They're going to make more mistakes this year. But, one good thing is they support crypto. So regardless of what else they do, they support crypto. Very helpful, but they're wild boys. So expect chaos. Like, they might light the fire for us. They might be the fire starters for us, but all the burning logs might also become a burning log avalanche. So, things might happen, but they might also be the ones who will start the fire. So we'll see. James Syracuse points out Face Off is on Netflix now. It was quite a good movie for its time. Quite good for its time, for sure. Lovely 2588. Thank you for joining. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. So this is kind of great. Like, while we do have some wild boys in the administration doing wild boy stuff, we've also got some very level-headed people like Paul Atkins, who not only understand the benefits of crypto, but also understand how this can all go wrong. So we've got these moderating figures. I think Scott Bessent, you might hate his sort of leadership of Treasury and some of the things he does, or you might love the things he does, but whatever you think about his sort of economic policy, or Treasury policy more particularly, he's also kind of a moderating influence. He seems like kind of a level-headed guy. So there are some level-headed figures in this administration. And they're kind of this is very promising. They're getting to the nuance that we need. We need this level of nuance about crypto, because crypto is not the kind of thing where it's like, you can't just, turn on crypto and be like, we're allowing everything's great, embezzle, use crypto to steal all the money from all the little old ladies, sell them meme coins and then dump on the little old ladies' heads. You don't want that part of crypto, because that has existed. In the last cycle, that has existed. We don't want to encourage that part of it, but we do want to encourage the good parts of crypto, and we do need to, refrain from creating a financial panopticon. There's a lot of nuance in crypto, right? Crypto's already complicated. Just explaining to somebody how a hashing algorithm works, which is the basis of, the very first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, explaining to somebody how SHA-256 works is complicated already. And if they want to understand how Bitcoin even works, they have to understand that. And that's just the most, basic form of crypto. That's not even adding in, all the Gen 2 stuff with smart contracts, all the Gen 3 stuff with proof of stake plus smart contracts, and now the Gen 4 stuff privacy plus proof of stake plus smart contracts plus the original Bitcoin blockchain innovation. So it's good we've got people who can kind of wrap their heads enough around that. I'm not saying guys like Paul Atkins actually understand how SHA-256 works, but I'm saying he understands enough and he's hitting all of the nuance. So this is good. This is a very, very good sign, especially if we're going to let the financial services world tokenize everything, right? Because we're going to get blamed. If that goes very, very well, then probably TradFi will take all the credit for it. If that goes very, very poorly, probably crypto will take all the blame for it. So we kind of need that part to go very, very well. Let's see. Next up, this was kind of an interesting little list from CoinGecko. I'll just call it a list. So they say most popular blockchain ecosystems in 2025 by mindshare. And you might be shocked as you go through this, right? Like if you're in Cardano, probably you look for Cardano first. And you're like, Cardano at number 8. You're like, okay, that's, we're used to the rest of the crypto ecosystem being pretty pejorative towards us. So that's actually, not too bad. Whether or not something like Sonic has more mind share than Cardano, highly questionable. But then you notice you probably have to start asking some questions about their definition of mind share because they have Bitcoin at number 13 with only 1% of mind share. I have no idea what their definition is, but if I had to guess, like what percent of people's thoughts about crypto are related to Bitcoin, I would guess far more than 1% of sort of the global thoughts about, I'll say global because I don't think we have any astronauts in space. So as far as I know, all of humanity is on Earth. I guess we have some people we probably have some people on the International Space Station. So minus those guys, all of humanity on Earth. The global thought about crypto, more than 1% of it surely is about Bitcoin. So there's something to their definition, their metric of mind share that I think is a little bit probably misleading. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking about some of these ecosystems, some of them I see, and I'm actually like seeing the word for the first time, like Barachain. I have no idea what Barachain is. Do I believe that Barachain is at 0.81 and Cardano is only at 2? Like, not really. I think there's probably, even if we just polled how many times Cardano is mentioned on X, it's probably far more than, the delta between it and Barachain is probably far more than is indicated here. But kind of interesting. They're saying we're the eighth most in terms of mind share in 2025. So Frazek says, people will not change. Crypto magnifies our worst characteristics. Crypto's reputation is unlikely to be redeemed. Yeah, I mean, what is reputation, right? It's like, there are a lot of industries that have bad reputations, things that have bad reputations. You could argue that, beer drinking doesn't have the greatest reputation. A lot of bad things happen. A lot of bad things are sort of reputed to happen when beer drinking is going on. And yet a hell of a lot of beer is sold, right? Every grocery store almost in, the Western Hemisphere is like likely to have beer. Beer is very widely consumed despite its bad reputation. I think we're gonna have to accept some portion of that, some part of that. Crypto is gonna have to accept that all of our meme coining and NFT, PFP, NFTing, and our ICOs, a lot of people got dumped on their heads. A lot of people had insiders dump assets on their heads. A lot of people were the exit liquidity for insiders for a lot of projects like that. You could argue maybe that's going on right now in some ecosystems. Maybe some ecosystems, people never ask. It's weird. It's always been weird to me. As you all could guess, I'm not a party to, the meme coins. I wasn't a party to the PFP NFTs. But I'm always shocked when the people in those ecosystems, when the price is dumping, you never see the people, the members of those ecosystems asking like, are the insiders selling? Because if I was like a huge proponent of one of those ecosystems, so I was inside there holding bags of those assets, I'd be like peppering the insiders with questions like, have you sold? When's the last time you sold? How much have you sold? I'd want to know all those things because that's exactly what the SEC would require, right? If the SEC were regulating those assets, the SEC would require disclosures as to those sales. That's like one of the most important disclosures. Are the insiders dumping on your head? That's like one of the primary things you get out of SEC disclosures. And in crypto, we don't have that. That's part of why these abuses go on. If I was an insider in one of those ecosystems, I'd be asking, if I was a member of one of those ecosystems, I'd be asking all the insiders, like, hey, can you guys just tell me of the following, however many insiders, 4 or 5, whoever you think the insiders are in those ecosystems, people should be asking them, please just tell me, how much have each of you sold in the last 6 months, the last 12 months, right? They should be able to answer those questions. Those disclosures do not happen in crypto. It never gets answered until years later. It becomes obvious, often during these kind of times that the insiders were selling. They were selling, and they have their arguments as to why they sold. I've talked recently on this channel how the founder of Litecoin, he sold at the top of the cycle. He told everybody, hey, I'm selling everything. I'm selling all my Litecoin. I built this thing for you guys. Enjoy it, but I'm selling. And he sold everything at the top. Super transparent about it. I respected that. I respected that he was super transparent about it. Let everybody know he's selling. That doesn't happen with a lot of these meme coin projects, a lot of these PFP NFT projects, right? It's like a lot of assets get sold off, and you find that at the end of it, the insiders maybe aren't holding as much as the community would like them to be holding. And the weird part is the community never asks the question. Like, you think you should be able to just send, if they're, good founders of this little micro ecosystem you're part of, and you have like, bags in that ecosystem, you should be able to hit up the founders and ask them, hey, how much have you sold in the last 12 months? How much have the other insiders sold? If they can't answer that question, that's maybe that's a red flag. CoinGecko being more sus than red. Yeah. CoinGecko. Yeah, CoinGecko is kind of interesting because in some ways I like some of the things they do. I always go to CMC. But I like some of the things they do, but this, I'd like to know their metric. I'm sure they have some. I'm sure, based on whatever their metric for mindshare is, I'm sure this is like accurate based on that metric, but it's like, how do you measure mindshare? Like, how are you guys measuring this? It seems like if it's Google Trends, like, okay, sure. If it's like the number of times something's mentioned on X, okay, sure, I like that. But I don't know. I don't know how they're okay. Oh, here we go. Methodology. The study examined interest in blockchain ecosystems based on CoinGecko's non-botted global web traffic from. Okay, so it's just based on. So they're saying non-botted global web traffic. So you have to ask a couple questions like, how well are they detecting bots, right? Are they really detecting all the bots or not? And if some ecosystem, if they're, if they're more CoinGecko than CMC, are they going to be benefited in these rankings? Like there's some ecosystem where they're like culturally like never go to CMC, always go to CoinGecko. Obviously they're going to rank much higher in these ecosystems than in like Cardano. Like in Cardano, I think many of us would go to CMC as opposed to CoinGecko. Sure, they want to promote their own ecosystem and they have access to this data, so you can't really ask them to, try to analyze data to a website, other than their own. But, they should have pointed that out up here. Like, hey, based on web traffic to CoinGecko. Brown Bearded Hermit says, I don't even know why CoinGecko would post this ordered list without explaining the methodology up front. Probably engagement farming. For sure it is. For sure it is. Brett Sarmiento, thank you for joining. Longtime listener, first time live tuner. Thank you, A. Thank you for joining and for listening. I appreciate you being a longtime listener very, very much. Brownbearded Hermit says I got to scroll down, I guess. Should have been. Yep. It's like we can't, there's a certain point at which we can't really be expected to pick up the details. Like this, they should have pointed this out, like the dates, whatever. This is like a 1 month period. 1 year period. No, 2 year period, January 1st to November 11th, 2024, and January 1st to December 14th, 2025. So it's like all of 2024 except December and all of this year so far. So the time period is fine, but really what they should have said is this is how popular CoinGecko is in the following ecosystems. This is almost more of a measure of how into CoinGecko these ecosystems are. So that would make sense to me. Like, Sonic apparently loves CoinGecko. I can buy that. I have no idea. I don't know anything about Sonic, so it's possible. Guinness Speaks. Hey man, I'm late. Was into some trading stuff. Okay. Hello, Guinness Speaks. Thank you for joining. So speaking of Cardano, Frazik says, Trump, Melania, Libra, Hawk 2025 has been awesome. Yeah, Charles made that point today. He was very disappointed with the Trump and Melania coins. I got to be honest. That was I sort of expected that if you think about like I don't want to get too much into politics, but if you think about like a guy like Trump, his whole career he's been a business guy trying to make money. So it doesn't really shock me that, you could arguably that was, his kids doing that, but it doesn't shock me that the most mercantilistic president we've ever had, that his kids would launch a coin with their last name and the first lady's name. That didn't really shock me at all. But it also was not. It also did. I think Charles's point still stands. It probably did, polarize the left against crypto to some extent. It probably wasn't a good look for crypto. But am I surprised they launched those things? No. I mean, they're like it's the most mercantilistic family you could ever imagine, right? I mean, the dude was known his entire career as a business guy, and then he was on a reality TV show as a business guy. You know what I mean? It's like he's a business guy. It's all about making money. So any surprises happen to me? No. Are Charles's points still valid? Yes, very much so. Speaking of Charles and IOHK, the IOHK rebrand has brought us some new things on the IOG website. So they've got one whole section. The first section of the website is now called Venture Studio. The Venture Studio bridges input-output research with global markets, helping entrepreneurs and innovators turn pioneering scientific concepts into thriving, scalable ventures. What does that mean? I have no idea what that means. So it sounds like they want to work with entrepreneurs, okay, and innovators. They want to turn scientific concepts into thriving, scalable ventures. So how are they going to help innovators? I would like to know. I would like to understand this. There's some kind of an input-output launch pad. How is that going to work? So what are we talking about here? Is this like a regular VC thing? Because I felt like he kind of did that with Wave Financial, right? Didn't we have that already with Wave Financial? So what is this exactly? But what was very interesting to me, what I did understand was this section, our products, right? So our products are born from scientific pursuit, an ecosystem with the scale to serve governments and institutions. Okay, that all sounds great. But then we come down here and we see a new list of IOG products. I think many of you will be very happy to see Bitcoin DeFi, very top of the list. Bitcoin DeFi, unlocking decentralized finance for Bitcoin, enabling cross-chain liquidity, smart contracts, next generation financial instruments. Okay, great. Multi-chain architecture. Sounds great. Then you've got Lace, and they relate that to, they say it has relationships to multi-chain and to Lace. Okay, great. So Bitcoin DeFi is something that's going to happen in Lace. No surprises there. Lace is a product. RealFi, this is kind of interesting. So RealFi you see ecosystem and product relationships, Cardano. I think a lot of people had questions. Is RealFi just going to be a thing on midnight? Or is that going to be a Cardano thing? We've heard Charles say it's going to be a Cardano thing. And sure enough here, RealFi, it doesn't say midnight, it says Cardano. And you notice that JED is going to be a prominent part of Cardano. And in fact, JED is listed as an IOG product. We all know, we all remember from the Wyoming Summit, Charles had the head of Coty come in to Wyoming and jump on the stage and announce that Coty would build JED, which they did. Obviously, JED is running. It's up and running right now. But looks like JED is going to be a prominent part of RealFi, as is Identis. How many people, I'm curious, how many people in the comments have actually heard of Identis? This is curiosity to me. How many people were actually aware of this product name, Identis? Daniil Wiggins says Gecko Analytics. Laughed my ass off. Yeah. Polarization. Pucky Hawk says polarization sucks. We used to argue over a burger. When we removed the burger, we started the end of civilization. Bring back the burger politics. I'm with you on this. Should prefix what people check in CoinGecko. Yep. Sub-Zero, nope. I'm guessing that's a nope on Identis. Bindocam says, I think it's signifying yes. Frazek says, never heard of them. Pucky Hawk says, not aware. Brett Sarmiento hasn't heard of it. It would be easier to follow if they didn't keep changing its name, but yes. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we know what Identis is just from the name, right? Identis, I'm guessing, we'll go down here to Identis. I'm guessing this is just the latest iteration of Atala Prism, right? This has got to be the descendant of Atala, which is the identity project from Input Output. I liked Atala. Atala was a cool name. That was like the name of a type of butterfly in Florida, right? Let's see. They build ID cards. Yep. It's obviously the identity product. Flavelli Flomachenko is right. They build, this is the identity product, obviously a decentralized identity framework. So we've got RealFi, we've got JED, we've got Blockfrost, we've got Quantum Hosky. We know that's coming. Catalyst, of course. Identis is the identity product. So I thought this was kind of interesting. So here's something else. Here's another thing I wanted to ask. Here's another thing I wanted to ask people about. So if you go to the leadership page for IOG, and I think people, if you've never looked at the leadership pages for some of the IOG companies, very high level people involved with IOG. When you look through people's bios, they have very, very capable, very high level people involved with IOG. You'll recognize many of these names, but here's another one. So here's another one you might not recognize: Integra and Overmind. Who has heard of Integra and Overmind? So this person is the VP of Integra and AI. Who has heard of Integra and Overmind? Yep. It's Atala Prism under the leadership of Hyperledger Linux Foundation. That's my understanding. S. Walker says, came home today and Puppers had blown all his bones on Night Token on the dip. He's an aggressive dog. Puppers is a very aggressive dog. Who has heard of Integra and Overmind? I'm just curious. Has anybody heard of this? So if we go, I noticed I was kind of trying to trace Integra and Overmind here. We go to Tamara's bio. She's the creator of Integra and is leading IOG's plans to build a state-of-the-art global campus. So this is kind of interesting. IOG is building a state-of-the-art global campus. That's very interesting. And she's a creator of Integra, also very interesting. So I'm guessing because this VP down here is the VP of Integra and AI, I'm guessing maybe Overmind is an AI product. Are we talking about an AI product? What is Integra, though? I don't think I know what Integra is. Does anybody know what Integra is? Frazek says, heard of neither. Is it another rebrand? No, I mean, they just rebranded like the logo and they changed the name from Input Output Global to Input Output Group. So I don't think it's a rebrand. But Integra and Overmind, mean, they tell us right here, they're not abstract ideas. They are living systems shaping how IOG builds ventures, embeds foresight, and scales governance. So, Carlos Vargas leads the design and deployment of these tools, ensuring that every venture benefits from cybernetic intelligence and adaptive execution. So, forensic tracing. Oh, Flavelli Flomachenko, forensic tracing. Is that Integra? Is Integra forensic tracing? That would be very interesting because what we don't have much of in the Cardano ecosystem is forensic. We don't have many native forensic tools, do we? That would be very interesting if Integra. Okay, yes, Integra is a forensic tracing tool. Thank you, Flavelli Flomachenko. Very interesting. So that sounds useful. We obviously haven't had the robbery forest type events like some other ecosystems. So we haven't had the need yet to the same extent that like the robbery forest has, but surely we will. So if IOG is building a forensic tracing tool, I will just thank them in advance because that'll be very helpful to us at some point in the future. So, the names of many. We're familiar with the names of many of these other people on the leadership team page at IOG. But yeah, so a lot of new information that came to the website along with the rebrand. Yeah, the new products are interesting. It's interesting to see a lineup of products. It's easy to forget because we sort of have seen these rolled out piecemeal. It's easy to forget that at this point we can say IOG has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 individual products that are beyond just the regular components of Midnight and Cardano. So kind of interesting. Okay. This also was posted today. So Sui was DDoS attacked yesterday, causing mass delays, proving again that 127 validators is not enough. I haven't been interested enough even to go check. I haven't been interested enough to even go check the status or the accuracy of this statement that Sui was DDoS attacked yesterday. But I definitely cracked up when I read this assertion that it had once again been proven that 127 validators is not enough. Like, who in their right mind in crypto ever thought 127 validators is enough? And down below, Stake with Pride, I love it. Stake with Pride does not cut him any slack whatsoever and points out something really important. He says, Solana has a public leader schedule and a single node leader, so it's an attack surface of one. No planet scale system relies on a single server. And there's quite a bit of discussion back and forth. The important part here that Stake with Pride pointed out is the public leader schedule thing, right? So 127 validators is not enough. If you're in Cardano with our thousands of validators, I think you'd instantly agree with that. 127 validators is not enough. We would be on like DEFCON 4 in Cardano if we were at any number of validators that low. And as Stake with Pride points out, we also have a private leader schedule. So the retort here was, this is a ridiculous statement, as that is literally how all blockchains work, including BTC, ETH, and ADA. Completely not understanding, apparently, that ADA's leader schedule is private. ADA's leader schedule is private. This has been a feature of the Cardano ecosystem for a long time. And I think a lot of people outside of Cardano don't know this at all. They think that it's just normal. The leader schedule is always going to be public, which doesn't make any sense. If you announce, Charles has talked about this many times, if you announce to the entire world who's going to be validating the block, that paints a huge bullseye on their back for anyone trying to run some exploit of the system, right? Why would you announce to all the black hats who is going to be validating the next block? Prior to announcing that, in the case of Cardano, they have to worry about how many validators have we got right now, like something like 3,000 or something. They have to worry about thousands of validators. If you publicly announce who is going to validate the block ahead of schedule to the entire world, then you narrow that down from thousands to one. And they sort of get the responses to Stake with Pride here sort of get bogged down and miss the point that ADA's leader schedule is private. But that's kind of entertaining. If you want to read sort of an entertaining discussion of the relative merits of the different top 10 blockchains in terms of security, it's an interesting discussion. But the funniest part, the most humorous part of the whole thing was that it had to be stated that once again, it had been proven that 127 validators is not enough. In Cardano, this is like utterly ridiculous. Whoever thought 127 validators could ever be enough? But then again, I mean, we talked the other night about how Solana, during what they're calling, I think, the prune, they decided to go from, also a number in the thousands of validators down to 800. They intentionally went down to 800. So obviously different blockchain ecosystems have different definitions of decentralization. S. Walker says, did you see Congressman Burchett the other day? 8 alien bases the Navy is aware of in the oceans at this point. Yeah, Burchett goes off. Burchett is more than happy to say some things on the UAP topic that not a lot of people in Washington, D.C. are willing to say, even though, I mean, he obviously is hearing the same, he's getting the same briefings and skiffs that the rest of them are. Burleson and Luna and all the rest of them are hearing the same stuff in the skiffs. Burchett is definitely has the loosest lips when it comes to this thing, in a good way for our benefit. I'm not implying he's doing anything improper. I'm glad he's saying these things, but we definitely hear a lot more from him, sort of like off the cuff. He'll just sort of start saying stuff out of the corner of his mouth, and it's a wider array of things than we hear from the other congressmen. Lots of pots on the fire. Yep. Would it even be possible to trace assets once Midnight is fully integrated? Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, it's sort of a philosophical question. What level of tracing is going to be possible under Midnight? And what level of tracing is going to be possible when things are shielded? So it's kind of interesting because, crypto has always sort of been this permissionless thing. And we don't, I probably won't think I have a good understanding of the way all that's going to work in Midnight until we can actually use it, because things might change in between now and then. But if you have the option of doing things on a shielded or unshielded basis, obviously shielded things are not going to be traceable to the same extent as unshielded things. So it's like you have to ask questions about like what portion of the traffic is going to be unshielded. Obviously, all that's going to be, I'm assuming, traceable to some extent, or to the same extent as normal blockchains, I'm guessing. And then you'll have some sort of required things. If you're going to use this, platform, this platform is going to require you to prove that you're not from one of the nations on the OFAC list. You're not some sanctioned party, some sanctioned entity or person, so there's gonna be a different level of data available for tracing. But a lot of the things that I'm guessing a lot of the things that would be shielded are things that people wouldn't broadcast on a blockchain anyways. They'd be sort of more things that are like linked to you, the same way we, certain forensic analysts on X right now trace hacks. They trace the assets from hacks and eventually figure out the real life identities of the people who carried out the exploit. So we'll see, but I think that's gonna be an important philosophical question around Midnight. Like, is it, to what extent is it acceptable that certain activities are less traceable on Midnight? This has always been the question. Anytime privacy is implicated by a blockchain, famously, some of the privacy blockchains that existed pretty early, actually, in the history of crypto. The founders of some of those blockchains, like Fluffy Pony, were, came under a lot of governmental scrutiny. So we'll see how it all goes down. But I'm sure that was like sort of like topic number one for IOG to analyze very, very carefully when they were in the initial planning stages of midnight. Night taking a hit on the chin right now. Buy time. Is it? What are the prices? What are the prices right now? What's the Kraken price right now? Trump will say that we will be hooking up with Dish and Dana White. Chill Sonnen says he's full of shit. That would be a collision of two worlds if Trump made any announcement about the Dish network. That would definitely be a replay of the Wyoming summit for sure. Brown Bearded Hermit says, sure seems like sooner or later we will get to Justin Bonds and he'll finally see the light. Who knows when though? Yeah, I try not to follow those characters, but when something kind of entertaining like this goes down, it's hard not to pay attention. If there's no way to trace, the IRS will be super mad. So, I mean, it kind of happens right now, right? It's like you've got some things that law enforcement gets mad about, like mixers. You know, obviously there's the big initiative right now to get a pardon for the people who are being prosecuted for samurai. You've got things like that the regulators get really mad about. And yet we can all transact on, Bitcoin just using addresses, right now. Like we can all send each other Bitcoin or ADA or Ether using addresses that don't have our names on them, So what things will the IRS be super mad about on midnight? What would they be really mad about? They'd be really mad if you could take like, $50 million and turn it into midnight and, take $50 million, turn it into midnight and have nobody know where the $50 million came from. They'd be mad about these kind of things that would aid tax evasion. But, already we can send, you can take all of your Bitcoin and send it to anybody in the world who can, give you a Bitcoin address, and the IRS doesn't necessarily know who owns either of those two addresses. So we'll see. Spielberg's new Alien movie might be hard disclosure and could get interesting. I'm really curious. It's fictional. Right? I thought when I didn't pay much attention when I first heard the announcement about it, which was before this recent billboard with the eye and the bird. But I'm curious. I'm curious if I'm curious to see what's in there, right? Obviously, his earlier real Alien movie we didn't know that was soft disclosure when they had the Jacques Vallée character and so many of the things in the movie. We thought it was all just like pure fiction, and so many of the things in the movie turned out to be from sort of the Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek files, and we didn't know that J. Allen Hynek. We know now from interviews with his son that he was like sort of an advisor to Spielberg on the show. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see what comes of that. Puppers wants to know if you've seen one. A UAP? I've not seen a UAP. There are some people really close to me who, I told this story before on the channel. There's some people very close to me who I trust very, very much, and who would not bullshit me on this particular topic, who told me a story, who told me the same story for literally decades. Every time I asked them about it, they were driving a goddamn Porsche through the desert at night, and all of a sudden something silently flew above them and illuminated their car and the road with a super bright light, didn't make any noise, and then flew away. So granted, where they were driving in the desert is a place that would have been within reach of a place, actually two places, but a place that is very much associated with UAP lore, and actually within reach of another place that is now associated with UAP lore. But so I know somebody who's seen something really weird, and one of those two people also saw something else one time that is pretty wild and sort of very, very consistent with what people are reporting about UAPs now. And they told me this story before I'd ever heard about this, before I'd ever heard anybody in the UAP scene mention the same thing. But so I know some people who have seen some weird things, and even those people didn't say, they knew what it was or anything like that. And I think I think the people involved in the thing with the Porsche in the desert, they actually believed that that was a U.S. craft at the time. And when they retold the story to me, they believed they weren't implying that was alien technology. They were implying that that was something in the U.S. inventory that the world has no idea about. That's what they're implying with that story. But obviously, that's very similar to many stories out there from many different people. Okay, night is 0.0554 on Kraken. It's still better than what I feared it would be a month ago. Still way better. Yep. So those are the ADA prices and the night prices. So thank you for that, both of you. Yeah. So yeah, I think what we've got going on though, is a really hard push. Like, we've never had a time before when we have so many TradFi institutions talking about sort of bringing their business on chain, doing things on chain. We've never had so much acceptance, obviously, from the TradFi world, and now we've got all that acceptance. TradFi obviously wants to come in. Like, we've known they wanted to come here for years. During the last cycle, I remember one of the most sort of like notable mentions of this was from Novogratz, right? Novogratz, no friend of Cardano community at all, and famously got a tattoo of a wolf and a moon because he was so into Luna right before it crashed. Poor bastard. But Novogratz said back, I believe we talked about it on this channel. He gave this interview where he talked about the immense interest from Wall Street to come into crypto and how they would come in the second the regulators would let them. Now we have the chair of the SEC talking about how he expects that all of TradFi, all the financial services world, is sort of going to be on chain. How it's basically implying everything's going to be tokenized. The securities are all going to be settling on chain, maybe not even in 10 years, maybe in just a couple of years. So if the SEC is not only willing to allow it, but they're expecting it to happen, I think Santa Claus this year really is bringing us an ushering in of the tokenization of everything. Like, we've always talked about the tokenization of everything. Even long before I had this channel, a long time ago, I had a sort of personal social media presence where I would talk very occasionally about crypto. And I remember one time I talked. This was way before I ever talked about Cardano online at all. But even back in those days, in the pre-Cardano days, the main thing I wanted to talk about was the day we would finally get to the point where it was obvious we were going to tokenize everything. And I think we're finally here. I think Santa Claus is ushering in that era for us where we really start to see the tokenization of everything. And like we've been talking about recently, it's kind of, I think, going to coincide with another period of liquidity. As it was described here, both by Warren Buffett and by commentators like this. Warren Buffett is saying he's scared. He doesn't want to be in an asset going to hell. And he's talking about the US dollar. Doesn't want to be in an asset that might go to hell. And here you see, he's talking about debasement. And he's not talking about it in euphemistic terms. He's talking about debasement and labeling it as debasement and talking about that as an asset going to hell. And here you see, commentators describing it in more detail. Like, hey, the Fed is basically telling you they don't think the market's going to buy the $9 trillion of federal debt, and they're going to have to do it. That means money printing. So, while we're at the very bottom, of I won't say the bottom. People take the wrong connotations from that. While we're in a very dark place in terms of crypto prices, it's there's kind of a lot of reason to believe the future's never been brighter. This is often the case, right? In crypto and everything else. It's like at that moment when there's blood in the streets, when Baron Rothschild famously told you to buy when there's blood in the streets. I'm not saying you should buy, but Baron Rothschild said buy when there's blood in the streets, and definitely feels like there's blood in the streets right now. I'll never tell you when to buy, but we're definitely at that blood in the streets point. And that's often the point when you have to look forward and ask yourself, are there bright things on the horizon or not? We don't know what any of these things are going to do to the price. Will TradFi manage to finagle a way to bring everything on chain without it benefiting us? Sort of like the natives of crypto. Are they going to be able to do it and take their pound of flesh without us benefiting from that, or are we going to sort of allow them to bring their assets on chain and keep our essential crypto essence? Like, all that's unclear, so we don't know how any of that's going to affect the markets. But it would be pretty hard at this point to argue that we're not going to see greater adoption in the crypto world, right? It's the world of TradFi customers are suddenly going to have access to our neck of the woods, to our crypto neck of the woods, and this seems like it's going to be an influx of adoption, the likes of which we've never seen before. What effect that will have on prices, I have no idea, right? I've always maintained nobody has any idea what's going to happen in the markets. Certainly that was the case a year ago. We were above $1.20. We've gone down 4x since then. Nobody really saw that one coming, so I won't pretend like anybody, let alone me, knows what things are going to look like a year from now. But there are definitely some good things to look forward to. Let's see. Puckyhawk says the sky falling and the earth rising would appear to be the same. Yep, true. Dark places is where millionaires are made. Seems to be the case. Fear on fear mixed with what the hell is wrong with you people and sprinkled with mercurial powers. Yep. For me, it is all about assessing where the biggest risk is and expose accordingly. Yep. Certainly good to know where the biggest risk is. So I think things are going to look pretty different once we get past the holiday season and things take off in 2026. But for now, I hope you're having a great week. I hope you're looking forward to a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.